There you go. Shai is the Director of Engineering at Pager, and he's going to be talking to us about transforming an unhealthy DevOps culture. Shai, I'm going to let you take it away.
Hello. Thank you, Jim. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, you sound good.
Yes, good. Okay. Let me just start this. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk. My name is Shai Weiss. This is a talk titled Transforming an Unhealthy Culture, and of course, given the topic of this conference, this meetup, I'm going to tie it also to DevOps specifically as strongly as I can. A bit about myself. Who am I? I'm currently, as said, the Director of Engineering at Pager, overseeing an engineering department of roughly 40 engineers at this point. Pager is a Series B startup. We're a B2B2C company offering a SaaS platform in the healthcare industry to other businesses who are health insurance and providers that in turn allow them to use this offering to offer virtual healthcare and telemedicine to their members and patients with some other bells and whistles. As you can imagine, this is a very interesting time to be in this industry and offering this kind of product, and I want to say I feel very fortunate and grateful that I find myself working in this capacity, in this place at this time, feeling like I can make a difference and providing more people with access to virtual healthcare at the time they need it most. Previously from that, I worked for Goldman Sachs for about 6 months as VP of Site Reliability Engineering. It was not a good cultural fit, ironically, with this the topic of this talk, so I didn't last there very long. And I think before that, a milestone in my career has been spending 5 years at Spotify, being a senior site reliability engineer and engineering manager, where I helped scale the company at truly interesting hyper-growth time both in terms of users and traffic and of course, numbers of engineers in the company, and going through awesome things like cloud migration, going through an IPO, going public. But really, I think one of the most important keys, facts about myself is that I'm an avid fan of velvety hippos, also known as pit bulls. And I recommend that you check this subreddit called our velvety hippos. Okay, let's jump into this. What do I mean when I say bad culture? So when I joined Pager as Director of Engineering, I inherited an engineering department which was both lacking in engineering practices maturity, which is part of the growing pains of being a startup and maturing, and also, honestly, an engineering department that was kind of traumatized by previous leadership and previous management that was very authoritative and unempathetic. And when I talk about bad culture in this context, I mean a mutual lack of respect that resulted through this leadership and management between engineers and leadership. So the lack of trust and respect from leadership towards engineer manifested in a framework and mindset that is solely focused on velocity. How many Jira points or tickets do engineers get through every sprint? And whenever we had problems with the technology side and with the engineering department, this was framed as engineers not working hard enough, be it poor quality, bugs, incidents in production, SLA breaches, closely missed or actually missed deadlines, all that engineers are not working hard enough. The other side of the coin is the lack of trust from engineering upwards, where engineers do not feel comfortable speaking out their mind and calling out things as they see them. They do not feel comfortable providing upwards feedback to management. And basically, management and leadership have no idea what is going on in the minds of the engineers that are working under them. They don't know that there's like some rumor mill, there's discussions among engineers, but that's completely opaque to us. So that in turn means this bad culture results in bad quality product, because all the focus in the department is on velocity and delivering the feature, and there's no room to talk about quality to talk about tech debt and improving the engineering side of the product, having an engineering roadmap. And that itself means massive unhappiness for everyone. Why? It's unhappiness for our developers because when you have all this tech debt that you need to work with, you are constantly firefighting with incidents in production. You are stressed and overworked because you have deadlines to meet for features on top of having to spend all this time firefighting. Engineers can take pride in their work because they know what they're building is not high quality product, just like patch over patch and accruing more and more tech debt. They're doing drudge work and they're working inefficiently, which impacts their developer experience, with developers needing to do basic things like provisioning new users or starting like a new organization within an existing environment. All that in turn results in turnover, which is terrible both for the department and the company and business as a whole, as we know. It results in unhappy customers because that means that our product might be buggy. It means that we have incidents in production, which often are known to us through our customers rather than monitor and alerting. It means in features being delayed and deadlines that are nearly hit or missed. And this means that the board members and like the high leadership of the company, the CEO, etc., are unhappy because what they see is low velocity, which in their mind translates to poor return on investments on the high cost that they're spending on engineering labor, which is one of the highest costs for the company. And having our quarterly company milestone missed and having poor predictability from the engineering department. So everybody are unhappy. I want to take a look at this state, at what it was to be the pager engineering department when I just joined at the end of 2019, or as I call it, the before times. The number one biggest pain point, I think, the biggest thing is that the employee satisfaction was at the bottom 5th percentile of the industry. We ran a survey with a third party that does employee satisfaction survey, and they provide us data how we compare versus the other companies that have taken the survey, and we're in the deep red, the bottom 5th percentile. Talking about velocity and tech debt, with all this tech debt, it takes us 2 weeks to stand up new environment which we've experienced with pain as we try to stand up a new environment earlier this year to meet the new demand for our business, to be able to take new customers. Of course, this is bad for the business because we want to be more flexible and have implementation and taking on new business be much cheaper from an engineering perspective. But from a DevOps perspective, when you think about disaster recovery, if it takes you 2 weeks to recover from a meteor hitting your data center, that's not a great mean time to fix. Again, talking about the drudge work the developers needed to do, where they were needed to do things like provision a new organization within a multi-tenant environment, or even to provision new users, rather have like a UI you can click a plus button and you have a new enterprise user for existing organization. And of course, monitoring. Who needs monitoring? That's what customers are for, right? No monitoring to speak of almost 100% of incidents caught by our clients, and multiple SLA breaches and more than 550 hours spent firefighting over a single quarter. That's, by the way, more than a full-time engineer working full-time across the whole quarter. That's very expensive. So I realized stepping into this role that I definitely need to work on fixing this culture and trust issue problem that we have, and I need to work on it on both fronts. Now I'm going to talk about how I work, and I'm still working on getting the leadership's trust back in the department. And how do we convince non-technical management, specifically CEO, operations, product, to change their mind and improve the culture on that side? So the answer, of course, is you speak very slowly and you use a lot of colorful pictures. For example, making the case that quality, cost, and time, there's 3 of these things, pick 2. In actual reality, it's like more peak 1.5 when you have tons of tech debt and like you're not starting from a blank space, but this is not realistic to expect all three things. You use language and metaphors that they understand, such graphs that look like stock prices, and you use words like interest, risks, return on investments, and trying to really engage with them this way. And these are actual pictures that I've used to present to our non-technical leadership. But more seriously, you do have to meet them halfway and explain, yes, sure, velocity is important, and it is. I do want my engineering department to be productive machine, a good, sleek, oil-humming machine. But the bigger picture is that it's really important to change the narrative to include quality in the discussion and make the narrative be more just solely being focused on velocity. So, and I can do this by explaining that focusing solely on velocity carries a very costly trade-off. You might be gaining short-term productivity, but what you trade off is at this expense is your long-term productivity. It's the stability and quality of the product. It's the turnover and satisfactions of the engineers, and all those very realistically translate to the business objectives and the company's milestone that we want to hit on the leadership level, on the board level. And eventually, you have to back this up with data. So I've of course, started gathering lots of metrics, and if I had more time, I would be able to present those. But this is one of the most key salient things that really drove the point home for our leadership by starting to gather via a Google form where each engineer report, in each chapter reports like how much time they're spending on firefighting, and showing that over a quarter, we spend more than 550 hours firefighting, and translated to a dollar number of what that costs in terms of labor. That's very salient for our non-technical high leadership. So I want to say, okay, you make progress, you get management buy-in. That alone does not change culture. You change the culture. Management buy-in, what that does for you, it gives you the space to do the actual work that can then change the culture. In my case, I got buy-in to dedicate a full quarter worth of work on tech debt, which was a quick win for me to win the favor and opinions of my engineers as stepping in as new director, because they were very thirsty to get the time and resources to put in this work so they can start taking pride in their craft. And I also got headcounts for more managers. When I joined, there were only 2 engineering managers across the 30 engineers, and this was very far from enough. But what is the actual work that you then need to do to fix the culture? So we talked about the side of changing the narrative on the managers. There's also gaining the engineers' trust back, at least in me as in the internal departmental leadership. And I've done that by starting bi-directional feedbacks in the form of open AMAs, which I'm going to discuss more in the next slide, and internal quarterly satisfaction service, which I'll also touch more on. I've done this by hiring and cultivating managers that fit the management style that we need to get in order to heal from the trauma of previous managers that have an empathetic approach to leadership, managers that lead through service and by example. Of course, there's also the fact that you need to mature our engineering process, which luckily I can bring a lot of that from my experience in site reliability engineering background. So things like making sure that every incident has a postmortem, that postmortems are blameless, that each postmortem has remediations, that those remediations are translated into JIRA tickets, that those JIRA tickets are then have a process to be in the backlog, prioritized into sprint work and not just forgotten forever, and more and more. Another big thing in maturing our processes was moving our releases, at least those releases that are potentially risky or have any client-facing impact, to maintenance window. Before that, our developers were living in the comfortable life of releasing during office hours in the middle of the day, no matter what. And that's nice and all, but actually moving that so that now if you want to have any risky release, you do it at 3 a.m. off hours, you do it by pre-announcing it to our clients through status page, so they have plenty of time and everything happening in the maintenance window. You'd think there might be, oh shit, now I have to wake up at 3 a.m. Actually, when they realize that by doing this, and seeing that sometimes when things go bad, they can just roll back part of the maintenance, and what this saves them is having to deal with the repercussion of being responsible for a high impact incident in production and potentially an SLA breach. That's actually something that they embrace and love to do, even though it means waking up at 3 a.m. And of course, making sure that the time that we got to work in Q1, focus on the right things, focus on observability, in scalability, in automation, things that will improve our velocity and improve the metrics that then I can then use this data to show our management, look, this is what you got in return for your investment. Isn't it nice? Don't you want to invest more? So as I said, I want to talk more about what does it look like to getting the trust back and what are those AMAs. So AMAs, Ask Me Anything, are an open forum to all our developers to ask whatever they want of the departmental leadership, myself and my boss. I use a tool called Slido. The free tier is perfect. And what you see here is a word cloud that I automatically generated from the written feedback that we got during the satisfaction survey for Q2. And as you can see, the biggest word you see there is AMA, feedback, transparency. And this is because literally every engineer gave us positive feedback that they love these AMAs. So they go on this tool, and we create an event on this tool, Slido, and they log in and they ask a question. And they can ask it anonymously, which is great. It gives them a feeling of safety that they can ask whatever they want. And other engineers can then log in and see all the questions that were asked, and they can upvote those questions. And this, in turn, give me and my manager, the leadership of the department, visibility into what I talked earlier about what our engineers are thinking about, and help us engage with them on what they are feeling most anxious about, what they're worried about, and help us actually take action items to try and alleviate the things that they're worried about. And I want to give two key examples for this. The first one is PIPs, Performance Improvement Plans. So we had an engineer who was put on a PIP, and they worked very hard to try to get off on the PIP, and they failed, and I had to fire them. And of course, the AMA that followed right after, all the questions were around that. People ask, why did X get fired? They clearly worked very hard. Are PIPs a death sentence? What is a PIP? How does a PIP work? Can you just get fired willy-nilly if a manager has a grudge? All these kinds of questions, which clearly the department was very anxious for because they had no idea. And this gives me the opportunity to engage with them and tell them, actually, you only hear about PIPs that go through the bad, unhappy path, that goes somebody who's put on a PIP, fails the PIP and gets let go. But actually, you don't hear about the cases which we have in the department of people who have been on a PIP and just improved and survived them, because we don't go and let everybody know every time somebody goes on a PIP. I show them what a PIP looks like. I show them the DocuSign document that they would have to sign over PIP, show how it goes with specific areas of improvements. The area of improvements has to be measurable, not just open to opinions. Clear metrics that anybody can look and say, did you pass this? Did you not pass this? I show them the checks and balances that we have in place for making sure that there is no management grudge, that anybody, if your manager has a grudge against you, can just put you on a PIP and fire you, because there's checks and balances with HR and other managers and peers that all play into this. I explained to them that this will never come as a surprise, because there are a series of discussions before you get put on a PIP with your manager. Just tell you, you need to improve this, you need to improve this, including at least one discussion where they will tell you, look, we've been talking about this for so and so long. If you don't improve, if I don't see improvement, you'll get put on a PIP. And I could explain to them in the specific case of the engineer why, despite them all seeing that this person worked very hard, they failed PEEP and were let go. And I could have gone more into this, but I need to be mindful of time. But you could literally hear the sigh of relief among everyone after this very honest and vulnerable conversation happened in the department and how good impact it had. The other example that I want to give is to show how this can have useful outcomes, good outcomes for management and the leadership of the company. So at Pager, about almost 50% of our engineers are remote, either in South and Latin America, Canada, and Europe. And there was a whole AMA with tons of questions for our remote engineers, basically voicing that they feel like second-grade citizens because US-based employees get benefits and they don't get benefits. So that started a whole series of discussions for me to listen to them, how they feel, why they feel that way, what do they want, what would make them happy, feel that they're no longer that, and formulate a plan, which we are now in the process of approving it high on the leadership to get a budget to give them the benefits they want. And this is a huge win-win situation for the company and the employees because it turns out to be that for a relatively low cost of a few $1,000s per engineer per year, we could give them benefits to be able to expense private healthcare insurance as well as IT equipment that will make them more productive. They only get like a laptop, but they could expense maybe a desk, a monitor, a chair, and they could keep it if they ever leave, because we definitely don't want them to ship chairs and desks back to the US. And in turn, we will get a much happier engineers, which we are able to return. Healthy engineers with good developer working environment are more productive. And this gives us a huge leg up in hiring by being able to say, hey, these are benefits that we can offer you, and this makes us more competitive. So this is a giant win-win for us. So now I want to talk about what's the state of Pager engineering now towards the end of Q20. So during the second quarter, we had no SLA breaches, we had less incidents, and we spent less than half of the time that we did on firefighting, which this turns into a huge cost saving and velocity increase. We have 33 of our incidents caught by monitoring and total 66% caught internally. So going from 100% almost caught by clients to 33% caught by clients. Far from perfect, but for 1 quarter's worth of work, a giant progress, and definitely we're heading in the right direction. We talked about 2 weeks standing up new environment. Right now it takes less than 2 days to stand a new environment, and hopefully by end of year it will be a matter of hours. We have right now enough automation and scalabilities worked into that so that now it doesn't take an engineer. An ops or product can provision new organization in an existing multi-tenant environment, and also user in bulk. And in some cases, we have clients, and this is where we're heading very soon. All our clients will be able to provision their own enterprise user, no engineering required, which is a huge cost saving. It's increasing velocity, and it's improving the cost of implementation and removing the drudge work that was required from engineers before. So all this is still far from perfect, true, but we're heading in the right direction. So all these things are important things, and I care about these things. And these are the things that my CEO and our non-technical leadership care about most. But you know what I care about most? This is what I care about most. Turning the engineering satisfaction around in the department. From being in the deep red, being in the bottom 5th percentile from the survey, as you've seen, as I've mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, to this is the Q2 satisfaction survey that you see now. No red at all. 4.18 out of 5. I hope to be working at Pager 2 years from now. No, this yellow, you see it's like 1 to 5. So this yellow is neutral. It's like a 3 out of 5. Nobody ranked us at disagree, which would be orange, and nobody ranked us at strongly disagree, which would be the same dark red as you see on the left. And for me, this is the biggest win that I got in stepping into this role as a director. So that's it. That's basically my talk. Thank you. I'm now open to questions and answer. And I just want to say that we're hiring. So if you want to join this awesome journey we're on, you can drop me an email or you can look at our open position at our career page. That's it.